Jai Baba, everyone. Good morning. It's a wonderful day for me. Absolutely exceptional in my life. This is an opportunity, a precious opportunity for me to put together and to look back into my life as it has been before Baba, after Baba. And it brings me to the present moment, to the now, with you here, to speak about my experience in Assisi with Francis, whom we call Francesco in Italian. And of course, with the link, with the golden thread that ties us all, which is Baba. So I want, first of all, to express my real deep, warm gratitude to each one of you who have made this possible. I'm here, I cannot yet believe that I'm here. And I'm surrounded by smiles and welcomes. Thank you very much. I don't know if you already know that there is, as Eriko in Merabad once told me, that there is a rainbow bridge that connects Merabad to Assisi. So many times, over many years. First time I traveled over the Rainbow Bridge was 1982. Many other times I've gone Merabad and Merazad. What perhaps some of you do not know is that there is another Rainbow Bridge, a very real one that connects Los Angeles to Santa Maria degli Angeli in Assisi. When the Spanish founded Los Angeles, they named it, they gave it a name, the name to the town they were building. The name was, and they dedicated it to the Holy Virgin, Mary, the Virgin of Santa Maria degli Angeli of the Porziuncola in Assisi. Now, Porziuncola is the small, ancient stone chapel that is in the plain below the town of Assisi, that was given to Francis as a place where he could stay at the very beginning of his life journey with God, with Jesus, and where he and his first companions, they built huts all around the chapel, and he would tell his brothers, companions, don't ever get too far away from this place. Stay close to Mary. His brothers, after living with him in the cold, in hunger, in being despised by people at the very beginning, at least, of their life, they always said that Francis to them was like a tender mother. So Francis was a new man. He had stepped out with full decision and love for Jesus outside the patriarchal society of his time. So he respected women. He loved his mother. He loved Clare. I mean, there were different kinds of love, of course. He loved Chiara, his dear sister. And also later, he became fond of Jacopa, who was an aristocrat living in Rome, who fell in love with, she loved God, and so she loved Francis's way of living the words of God, of Jesus. So the rainbow bridges connect all of us to Assisi. Assisi is a very small town nestled against a big mountain, all built in pink stone, surrounded by ancient walls. It was a Roman town, so there are still Roman ruins. In the main square there is a temple very well kept temple to Minerva. But this leads, Assisi, when I first went to Assisi, it was a very sleepy, provincial town, used to follow the habits, both in religion and in normal life. But then something happened to me, to my life, and simultaneously to Assisi. And for that, I have been a witness, thanks to Baba. So, storytelling, telling a story is the most important thing, because in the old days, when people didn't have computers, telephones, books, the mass of people was ignorant. They couldn't read or write, only the elite, the top layers of society. So storytelling was the way to transmit not only the story, but the very essence of the story, the meaning, the seeds that would have to be spread so that they became history. So here I am. I will use my words and my memories, but I have already begged, and I continue to beg Baba inwardly to put the essence of what I'm about to say, the essence of the events, the essence of the personalities, and of the link, the connection. So where to start? It was August 1986, and I was outside Mandali Hall with 3 people. One was Erich. The place was very quiet. Erich, Amrit, and a common friend of ours, a friend called Christine. Amrit and Christine were going to travel to northern India, and I was so attracted to the 2 friends and to northern India, and I said, can I come too? And they said, yes, come. I turned to Erich and said, Erich, didn't Baba say that one should go straight back home after being in Mehrabad, Merazab? He said, don't you worry, you already have Baba in your heart, go with them. As if pulled by a thread, immediately Mani appeared from behind the blue bus. And she said, who's going where? I said, Mani, I'm about to decide whether to go with these 2 friends. She said, no, you go straight back to Italy. So I'm on the bus, going back to Mehrabad, feeling sorry for myself, talking to Baba and saying, Baba, what is this? Whom should I listen to? No, Erich said to me, immediately after Mani's words, he said, she's the lady, listen to the lady. So I'm on the bus, sitting by the window, feeling sorry, saying, Baba, whom should I listen to? The bus stops at Ahmednagar for a moment, for the 5 minutes. Somebody knocks on my window and says, Valeria, there's a cable for you. And it's my son from Rome. Say, Mama, come home immediately. So the next day, I want to say goodbye, a proper goodbye to Erich, and I go to Erich's office in trust office. He sits me down, he listens, we talk, I say, I've come to say goodbye, I am so sorry to leave, but there is one good thing about my going back, I say to Erich. Next month, September 86, I know that there's going to be something that has never happened before, a world gathering of the leaders of the great religions of the world, organized by World Wildlife Fund. And the Duke of Edinburgh will come, and many people. He immediately said, you go and be Baba's silent representative. So that has really changed my life. So I went back. First I went to Assisi. And now I will try with my words to convey an extraordinary event. We have experienced, many of us, maybe all of us have experienced being in Merazad, having this feeling of a real family, of being accepted, being known, being embraced, being welcomed, in full joy. The joy of recognition, the joy of having a common beloved. But that was, Meher Baba's home, a small nest of people who were all connected so closely to the avatar. Here, it happened in Assisi, in a small town where hundreds of people had converged, having walked paths that came from the mountains, all the walks that Francis had walked over years. And I joined the crowd about 4 kilometers outside Assisi. And this crowd was the most joyous I've ever seen, all tanned and dirty and sweaty and happy. We arrived at the northern gate of Assisi, which is a very small, humble gate. It's the northern one, the way out, whereas all the others, the entrances to Assisi, are sort of magnificent. Up on the top of this gate, which is made of pink stone and some bricks, there's a little bell. A man had jumped up on top. So the bell started ringing. We entered, and we were greeted by Sudanese drums, by Tibetan horns, or I don't know what they're called, trumpets, I think. And then the wind. The wind became a presence, alive. And all the banners and all the flags that these people were carrying started, flapping like sails. And we became a river, because the streets are very narrow, they go down to the square. We became a river of exaltation, of intoxication. It lasted 3 days, and people would hug in the streets, they would pray together, they would sit in the grass and pray and hug. It was like a divine intoxication, and it was like brotherhood. Eruch said that during your life, they experienced, Baba gave them the capacity to be brothers. No selfish thoughts. They would cooperate and love one another as brothers. And I have experienced that, and it was absolutely incredible. The one thing that happened, among many other things, people were dancing in the streets. And this doesn't happen in Italy very much, at least not then, and not in a Catholic dormant place like Assisi in those days. So the Assisi people at first were surprised, amazed. Little by little they started to melt, their hearts thawed, and they were friendly, they participated a little bit. Then the Duke of Edinburgh and the leaders of religion, they went into the Basilica of St. Francis. But whom did they take with them? The animals. I remember this huge fox and the hoopoe and the rooster. They had made images on long poles, and the animals were given full honor. They would enter into the sacred place with the humans, with the people. Because in the mind of the Duke of Edinburgh was the utopia, the thought, the dream of saving nature, together with religions, with the churches of the different, with the faiths of the different cultures and religions, which we hope is happening now. We don't see many signs, but we are hoping. 1 month later, the Pope came, doing the same thing, a similar thing. had invited the leaders of the great religions of the world, and everything was somber, organized. There was police. There were discourses. And I went and I participated fully to both events. But I could see the difference. I could really appreciate the great distance between being a religious one and being a mystic, between religion and between love for God, alive, in action. And I was so much a participant to the second, to the October one, to the Pope's event. There was a platform bigger than this for the Pope, with all tiny bonsai olive trees in many. When the Pope left and everybody was leaving, I thought, well, I took 2 olive trees. They were there for everybody. One I gave so that I wouldn't feel too guilty. But the other one I took with real intention. At that time, I had seen a place outside Assisi, on a mountain, just across the holy mountain, Subasio, that I was going to buy for myself. And that's where I planted the little tree, which now has become magnificent after all these years. Around that time, shortly, 2 things happened at that time. When I saw people praying the way they were praying, with such intensity, with such sincerity and union, I begged Baba to please give me. I was alone. I knew I was the only Baba lover at that time. That's what I knew, in Assisi and perhaps in Italy. So there was a real solitude. And I had, because of the mistakes made in the past in my life, I had felt unworthy of continuing my love relationship to Jesus. So I was alone. I didn't have God with me. I had Baba, but Baba was a young relationship. I wasn't yet so firmly implanted. So I begged Baba, I said, Baba, please let me find a group of people here with whom I could have the same union that I feel in India, in your home. Well, I did see a group of people that attracted my attention right on the lawn, right in front of the entrance of the Basilica of St. Francis. And I went to them. I said, who are you? Because, such was the exaltation. We could be brothers and sisters. They said, we come from Spello, which is a town on the same mount, very close to Assisi. Another saintly town, but without a saint. Assisi has been imprinted by Francis. And one of them said, I'm a priest. You can come if you like. It's like an ashram. Come, you write to us, you ask for. So I did write. I said, can I come for a week? The reply was yes. I went into this monastery. I stayed a sabbatical year, practically a whole year, to try and negotiate Jesus and Baba. I was so I had been brought up as a Catholic and I believed deeply and loved Jesus deeply. It wasn't so easy to let go of all that I had known and loved and to know that they were the same thing. It took me that much. So during that time, and during my time at the monastery, I started meeting other people, seekers, who had come to Assisi looking for a place where they could start a new life, having had already experiences of years of life. one woman, one British painter, had walked with her husband from London to Rome as a pilgrimage, eating carrots and whatever they found on the road, with 3 children. They were in the monastery. They had not a penny. They were given a place where to stay. She became a friend. There was a British Buddhist nun who had lived for years in a cave in the Himalayas. She came to Assisi looking for a sacred place in Europe. There was an American who had been a close disciple of an Andama, living in India next to Amanda for 12 years with his wife. I was Baba's representative, and there were other painters who had come because of Giotto, because of the... We all were searching for the same thing. We started looking around. We bought farmhouses that in those days had been abandoned by the farmers. Life was too poor, and they were coming closer to town or to the plain. So we all had the same problems, where to buy cement, where to buy the bricks. We connected. Then we connected at a deeper level. Then we started becoming a group. The people of Assisi looked at us, some with curiosity and some warmth, but many others with suspicion. Who are they? Why do, we were dressed simply, sometimes muddily. We would speak English. We would laugh more than they did. We were not so welcomed. So we said, okay, we need a place in Assisi, because we were all far. We were on the hills, having to drive into town for this or that. We said we would like to have a place in town where to meet, as you have so wonderfully done here. There were 2 bookstores in Assisi, one very Catholic, only Catholic, absolutely Catholic. And then there was one bookstore called East-West. I said, the guy was going to sell it, give it up, he was going to change and move on. I said, couldn't we have, our group have it? He was happy. We moved in. The painters started painting the wall, fresco in the walls. The idea was, yes, a gathering place for us, but the main idea, in my mind, was to be able to sell Meher Baba books, to introduce Baba photo words into Assisi. With Rumi, Hafiz, Master Eckhart, all the great ones, of course, and Francis. And we did. We named it Alta Chiara. I don't know if the name tells you anything. Alta Chiara is the name of the villa that Elizabeth Patterson found for Baba on the Italian Riviera in Portofino. Alta Chiara was a villa that belonged to Lord Carnarvon. Many of you will know that Carnarvon was connected with Tutankhamun. Alta Chiara means high and clear. It's the name of the sword of Charlemagne. Chiara is the beloved of Francis. So we said Alta Chiara is a good name. But we were surprised that only a few foreigners would come and be delighted to find in an Italian small place books in English, and not many Assisi people would come. We then heard that the local bishop didn't like us very much. He would send spies to see what we were selling, and he related to us as the scum of the hills. So that was that was part of the difficulty we all felt in living in Assisi. Because Assisi is a truly wonderful place, absolutely. So much so that the avatar has left India, has come to a country in a different continent to spend the night on a mountain in a tiny little cave, which is not even a cave, it's like you have seen photographs, it's like a tiny little place. And it came for such an important mission, to map out the future of the universe for the next 2,000 years. I have been fortunate in so many ways and have felt this particular possibility of intimacy. I thought, I'm the only one here in Italy who knows about Baba, who knows that Baba has come to this cave. I would go again and again and again. And I would hear little messages in English. Now, who would speak to me in English in a little cave where I was alone? I can share with you a couple. One was always include, never exclude. So that speaks to you about the gift that Baba was giving me. I felt alone and lonely at times in my heart, but Baba would send me his lovers. So it was a teaching for me because I was full of myself and of my own life. And I had to learn to give and to share. So, never exclude. The other one that puzzled me and has continued to puzzle me for a long time until I realized what Baba was telling me, because he was using an English that was not in my norm. He said, establish your belonging. In those days, I had a house in Umbria, my family home. I had a little house in Assisi, just outside the town. I had a place in New Mexico because I wanted to escape Assisi and I had fallen in love with a place in New Mexico. So establish your belonging, I thought, and India, of course. I often thought I would go and live in India. So I thought, where of all these places? When I realized later on that the belonging, the real belonging is something else. Belonging is the heart. So I did establish my belonging to Baba and to Assisi. Maybe I will tell you a little story connected with the little cave of Assisi. It was a time when I was loving Jesus and I was loving Baba. And I knew it was a time of transition in that sense. They were one, but in me, I had to make the transition. So, on the night of December 24th, I jumped over a wall. I will explain to you where the cave is situated. I jumped over a wall. I had a little flashlight. I walked silently on a very steep, sort of dangerous path, and I settled down in the cave, and everything around me. I was in the woods, alone with Baba, in the cave, waiting for midnight, for Jesus to be born, Christmas time. And I was lost in this beautiful silence, and above me, from the woods, from the hermitage above, I heard a singing, very gentle singing, man's voices. And the singing moved through the woods, and it moved. I thought, what is this? But I enjoyed. And then later, the next day, I heard that there is a tradition that the friars who live in the hermitage above the cave, on Christmas night, they pick up baby Jesus, they carry him through the woods, singing for him, to a place where there is a cross, which is the end of Jesus' life. So here there were two different layers, two different places out of time. And I was experiencing, not witnessing, but really experiencing with my heart completely open and silent. Can I go on about the cave?
Yes.
Well, the cave. When one wants to find the cave in Assisi, one has to walk or drive up the mountain several miles. Then there's an entrance to the hermitage called the carceri. Carceri means prisons. It was given because Francis, when he left the world, as he said, he chose his voluntary prison. He imprisoned himself in places where there was nothing. It was a very rugged, wild place on the mountain that he chose. Now there is a hermitage. But when you walk in with signs saying silence, huge, old, ancient trees, the woods in front, you feel the sacredness. You feel the deep sacredness of that place. So you walk through the hermitage, you go down, finally you're on a path which is smooth, and then you go down some steps, and that is where the path to the cave begins. And it's like going into one's own subconscious, on the underworld, because it's a steep ravine, you say? Mm-hmm. The path is zigzags. And you have to be as careful going down because it's slippery, as careful coming up because it is steep. You go down this steep ravine, you reach the bottom, and then you start going up. Then you turn a corner, and it's like a different world. You find different caves, small, chapels, all the brothers of St. Francis who would pray together, but separately, close but separately. Then you go on, down some more difficult paths, and you find the little cave. So it is a symbolic, not only an actual physical walk, but it is also, one may take it as a symbolic path. As Eric used to say about Seclusion Hill, that you come to a corner, you don't know where your life is going, and then you turn and you see that there's another option, and then you turn again. So one day, I'm in Merazad. Mani calls me to a side, to her office, and she says, "Sit down, Valeria." She put in my hand a beautiful Indian box, about this big. She said, "Open it." So I opened the box, velvet inside, beautiful. Inside there was a tiny silver box, as big as half of my thumb. And a piece of paper where Mani had written, "It contains sacred Duni ashes of the Duni fire that Baba lit at the end of his universal work in a cave in Assisi." She said, "Valeria, I'm giving this to you. These ashes should never leave Assisi." Thank you, Mani. I take the box within the box, and I'm living, at that time, I was living on a farm on a mountain, free. So I put the Baba, and the Mandali would give me other little things, so I put them all in a box. For years I had these sacred things, and I was leading my life. Recently, a few years ago, I realized how old I was. Suddenly I said, I have 3 sons, 3 beautiful, beautiful men. 2 of them have come to Merabat, but they're not Baba lovers. Eric said, the alarm clock, Baba sets the alarm for each one separately. So I wait. So I couldn't leave the precious things to them. There were 2 half Baba lovers, one German woman, Bina, one the American painter. In the meantime, the British painter who had walked, she had died, but she was not a Baba lover. So, what to do with the ashes? Never to leave Assisi. So I spoke to Amrit, she gave me her idea. I spoke to Falu, he gave me his idea. Then I wrote to Nashirwan. So I didn't know. Finally, a decision was made. The best place we thought we could think of was in the very cave of Baba. How to do that? That's when Nashirwan became precious. He wrote to a museum curator. The curator answered back, and the reply came to me. So I knew nothing about this. I had to find somebody who worked with iron and ask him, could he make a capsule in steel that could contain the little box? He was very kind, and he did. And when I measured, and then I had to find a crevice in the cave that would contain the capsule, that then could be cemented with a stone, all of that. And it became like a game. I said, Baba, you help me. I went with the capsule, it was too big. So I went back to the man saying, please make a smaller one. This man was creating stone sculptures to go in the main square of towns, enormous things. So he said, this must be for some very special reason. I said, yes, it is. So we talked about that. Then I asked Bina, the German friend of mine, half Baba lover, who had been to California for Yogananda and had chosen Assisi, again, another one who had chosen Assisi. I said, will you help me? Because we needed to take photographs. I sent the capsule to Rome because in my family there is a jeweler. So I asked the person to engrave Meher Baba, ashes from the Duni lit by Meher Baba, and the date on the little silver spot. Am I too detailed?
No,
It was like Baba training me to do this and that and go to and ask. I'm reserved, I'm shy, so I had to ask all these things. Okay. Finally, we had chosen 2 spots in the cave, 2 crevices, because the rocks go diagonally down, they're cut like this. And there were some crevices. Where? So Bin and I chose the day, we had our cameras, we had cement, the one that works quickly. We had all kinds of tools. We sat there, we sat in the cave, and it was dark and cold and rainy outside. We said, Baba, please give us a sign. What is the best? We knew the importance of doing it properly so that it wouldn't be known, it wouldn't be seen and recognized. Where? As we asked, a little beam of light, a ray of sun, hit exactly one of the 2 places. That was it. So we did it. And then recently I was at the cave and one Baba lover said, do you mean that you are the only one who knows? I said, yes, I'm the only one. For the time being. And then, no, I'm not the only one. Amrit knows. Can I go back to when the wave of lovers of Francis were walking towards the northern entrance? They were entering into a different time, a time when Francis had walked those same paths and roads. So the last time Francis walked a long, long road from the mountains of Tuscany was coming down from La Verna, the mountain that had been given to him as a gift, and where he had gone in total frustration and humiliation and confusion in his life. He was not so much the saint that the church has written the biography for, the simpleton. No. he was one of us. He was like a brother to everybody in his time. And he was simple, but he had full charisma. And he was humble, and he had authority. And when he went to Laverna, he had been betrayed by the many, many young people who had come from Europe to see him, to hear him talk, attracted by his way of life. But when they saw how difficult, how cold, how poverty that he had chosen was hard to follow, they said, no, we want a house, we want books, we want to study. They wanted what he had eliminated from his life, from his rule of life. So he went to Laverna with Brother Leo, who was his companion, the one he called Little Lamb of God. And that's where he received the stigmata. The stigmata were to him the full validation that his life had not been wrong, that he had done the right thing. Jesus gave him unity. So he came down tired, cold, hungry, ill, very ill, but absolutely radiant with the fact that his life had been fulfilled. On the way down from Laverna, on the way back to Assisi, there was a castle of a very powerful family with a strange name, full-sounding name, Barbolani di Montauto, aristocrats of ancient family. The master of that time, Alberto Barbolani, had become a friend of Francis, because Francis would come and go. They were friends. So he welcomed Francis and Leo to stay the night. Francis spoke about his imminent death. And Alberto said, Francis, you know how much I love you. Won't you give me something to remember you by, something I may keep? And Francis said, Alberto, I would happily give you something, but all I have is the robe I'm wearing. So Alberto said, okay, will you give, the robe he was wearing was the robe with the stigmata, the blood, and will you give me the robe? I shall give you another one before you leave tomorrow. So all through the night, the ladies of the castle, they made another robe, a new one for Francis. So the stigmata robe stayed with Alberto Barbolani, but stayed for 280 years as a precious relic. It was then moved to Florence, and it is now at Laverna, in the monastery at Laverna. Whereas the new one that Francis wore for the next 2 years before dying, is the one with which he was buried. But there is a little twist to this story, because the story I've just told, I've read recently on a book, and it reminded me that years ago, when I had a place in Florence and I was living there, the owner of the place was called Barbolani di Montauto. And one evening, we had a little drink and conversation together. And he said, oh, you come from Umbria? St. Francis. It was my ancestor who gave the robe to Francis. I said, Baba, thank you. Why am I so connected? Another connection with Francis that tells you how generous Baba is, and how generous Baba has been with my life, because, and I will tell you in a moment the other connection, I had made difficult choices, and I made choices that sounded and seemed wrong, and in fact caused disruption and destruction in my life and in the life of my dear ones. So there was a time when I reached a bottom. But Baba, little by little, did to me and to my life what the Japanese have an art form for. I cannot remember the name, kintsugi, something like that. When a pot breaks, they pick up all the pieces and then they mix the glue with some gold. So they glue back the pieces so that the scars are gold scars. So the pot becomes even more precious because it carries the scars. So this is what has happened to my life, that my life has been given all these connections that I have no saying about. It just happened to me. One that happened was I was walking on a hill looking for a farm for one of the many we were going around, we had a choice. We went to one that was called Paradiso number 41. I inquired, and as we were walking, from a distance, I saw an abandoned farm way out there. Inwardly, I heard myself say to myself, that one is for me. And it was. The guy said, I never wanted to sell, I love it too much, but I need the money now. I'm selling to you. When I went to see it, it was abandoned, it was sad, it was empty, destroyed by the earthquake. And it had a little tile at the entrance of the kitchen, in blue, said, Paradiso number 40. So I inquired with the neighbors, the peasants, the farmers. I said, who gave the name? They looked at me and they said, since the beginning of time, this is Paradiso. So, the hill outside Assisi, outside city walls, where the Basilica of St. Francis, that was chosen by the Pope of those days as the site where to build the Basilica of Francis, was called the Hill of Hell. It was the place where the poor, the homeless, the bandits, the lepers would be, and also where the gallows would be, so the Hill of Hell. So the Pope said, let's change the name to the Hill of Paradise. So connected with that first Hill of Paradise is a small range of hills. My farm was number 40 Paradiso. Yeah, number 1 being the Basilica of Francis. Where can I go from here? What to tell you? I can tell you something more about Francesco, about Francis, his choice, the choices he made of following the gospel, following the words of Jesus, following the life of Jesus, not the words actually, the way Jesus and his companions and his Mandali lived. And to do that, he could see the corruption that was in the church. He could see the injustices that the church was using. He also knew that he was, by choosing to live poorly, very poorly, by choosing poverty as his bride, he was sending out a message that was not well accepted. So he was walking a very fine line. He knew that the church would burn the heretics, still in those days. They would be destroyed. I mean, there were sects or communities that were destroyed. So he always obeyed the Pope. He befriended, of course, the Pope. He had to, because he had to be accepted. And it was God's blessing that he could do that. So he was naive, but clever. And he had such faith. And also he had good humor. He would walk in his poverty, in his only robe, in his hunger, and he would come out singing French troubadour songs. His mother was French. So, and the French, the Provence, southern France, was the region that held a real different message, a different life. It was about love, and love in a new way. It was human love, but it was at a higher level than the love that was being lived in those days. So he would sing. He loved the French language. I have read that sometimes he would even pretend he was playing the violin, as Mani has done so beautifully in Merazad once. He was reluctant to accept the many invitations that Clare would offer him. She would say, because he had placed Clare in a small church that he himself had reconstructed, restored, that it was falling down. That's where Jesus had spoken to him, and he thought, like my belonging, he thought, when Jesus said, my church is falling, please restore my church, he started picking up stones and repairing, and then he realized that the repairing had to be an inner one. So Clare was in this small hermitage, not alone. One of her sisters had gone, then her mother had gone. But life was poor. They had to go begging, they had nothing. They had given up their beautiful clothes, warm. And she would say, Francis, she would tell brothers. The brothers would come and dig, they would help with vegetables, caring for the garden. And Clare would say, please tell Francis to come and have a dinner with us. We would pray together. And Francis was reluctant. Because there must have been a real, not only friendship, but a real attraction between the two, and they knew they wanted to live it at a higher level. They wanted to put that love above the ordinary level. One day, finally, the brothers said, come on, Francis, let us go. They're preparing soup for us. Let's go and be together. So they went. There was a small refectory. They were all seated at the table. And Francis and Clare said, let's pray first. Let's say our prayers. Let's say our thanks for the food we are receiving. So Francis and Clare, they started praying in silence. All the others waited. The soup was getting cold. And it went on and on. The silent prayer, the soup getting colder, and suddenly they hear somebody shouting at the doors and banging on the doors and said, there's fire, fire. So they ran. The farmers nearby had come. They had seen a big light over the Porziuncola, over the San Damiano actually. Sorry. San Damiano is the place where Clare was. They said there's fire. And there was no fire. And this is recorded, and it's history. So when such things happen, we are bewildered that they can happen to anyone, really, because Francis was not the very special man. He loved all the Maya things that we all love. He loved his friends, he loved the girls, he enjoyed wine and pizza and good clothes and his wealth, because he was privileged. And what comes to mind now to me is something that I've always believed, that how can one give up something that one doesn't own? First you have to own, then you can give it up. Because unless it's yours, how can you give it? It's like Draupadi, the story of the sari. So Francis loved all these things, so he knew what he was giving up. And his giving was done freely, with joy. When Brother Leo asked him one day, they were walking from Perugia, and it's a long walk from Perugia to Assisi. And Perugia was the enemy, has always been for the Assisi people. They were walking and Leo said, "You always mention, Francis, perfect joy. Where do we find perfect joy?" So Francis made it, they were walking together in the cold. He made it into a long story. He said, "Well, Leo, suppose we are walking and it's winter and we want to reach the Porziuncola to finally have something warm to eat and a bed to sleep. And we are wet and it's cold and we have icicles hanging from our robe. We reach the Porziuncola, we bang on the door, we say, 'Open, we are here.' And from inside somebody says, 'Go away, you're not one of ours, you're bandits.' Suppose we bang again and we say, 'No, this is Francis and Leo, and we won't, please, we're tired, we're cold.' And again they say, 'If you don't go away, we'll come out and hit you.' And they do come out and hit us, and we're on the ground in the mud. If we can take all that with full resignation, offering it, that is pure joy." So he was turning all the suffering, he was accepting the suffering, the difficulties, the doubts, all that happens, all the things that happen to each one of us, turning everything into the possibility of joy, which is the message for us today. So when I bought the farm Paradiso, because my great love in life was to live in the woods, I finally had my Paradiso. I was living up above. I had the mountain, the sacred mountain, right across. I could see it every morning, every night, in its different lights. Beautiful. I had my own mountain behind my back. I lived with 2 Arabian horses. One of them had been my 4th child because he was a month old when his mother was killed, so I fed him, and he thought I was his mother. I was totally enchanted by the life I was leading, alone, most of the time. And then Baba started sending me his lovers. One day, I was in Merabar. Bao approached me and said, "Valeria, I'm coming to Assisi." I said, "No, Bao, please, don't come to Assisi." Why are you coming to Assisi? There's nobody. I'm here. I'm the only one. He said, "I'm coming to Assisi." He came twice. I was terrified of Bao coming. You know, my house was under construction. My farmhouse had been completely demolished almost, and was under construction. What to do? So, after he told me, I was in the old pilgrim center on a Sunday morning when all the girls wash their hair and the men start playing their instruments, preparing to entertain the Mandali, the ladies in Meradad. And they're sitting on a wall. I remember David Barrison, Beverly
Smith.
Anyway, the violin player.
Smith.
Yes. What is her name? Beverly?
Smith.
And Caris Arkin and Jimmy Newell. I went to them and I said, "Would you please come to Assisi when Bao comes? I'm inviting you, come. I don't know what to do with Bao. Be there and give us music." So they came. And we all camped here and there, mattresses here and there, and eating here and there. But Assisi was such in those days that at least two things happened. 3 things. We were living in the woods, so my half Baba lovers friends came and they had picked bunches of flowers, of natural, wild flowers. So we would walk around Assisi around bow with all these flowers in our hands to make ourselves noticeable. Who are they? We are the Baba lovers in town. So that happened. The Franciscans, who have their stronghold next to the Basilica of St. Francis, the Franciscans gave a hall to bow to give a speech. So he was able to enter and speak about Baba inside the sacred convent. People would come, Americans would come, they would call me and say, I want to come to prepare Baoji's breakfast. I said, these people must be crazy to come from the US to prepare Baoji's breakfast. Then I'm here coming from Assisi, and Diane and Terry have treated me like royalty, preparing coffee and breakfast for me. So, and then one evening, because we had all these musicians, we said, let's have a concert in Assisi. Let's open the concert to the people. There are two squares in Assisi. One is the main square, the official one, with the fountain, with the Temple of Minerva, with all the official buildings, and the tower. The second square, is dedicated to St. Clare. They're connected by a main street. So we chose the main square, of course, next to the Temple of Minerva. We told people, as many as we knew, we told them the time. We went, not a soul, nobody, but us and the musicians. So we said, okay, we shall give a concert for Baba. So we had some chairs. We placed the chairs right in front of the Temple of Minerva. There's a huge arch in the middle of the square. Baba was seated in the middle of the square. Under the arch were the musicians, and they gave a concert just for the few of us. We were maybe 10, 12 people. We didn't know that in the square of St. Clare there was an official concert. So all the Assisi people were there. When one song started, the Don't Worry, Be Happy song, and we all sang, a small group, we sang together, the bell in the tower started ringing. We looked at the wall. We knew at what time the bell rings in Assisi. And it rings, at a certain time, and it rings for the dead. But that was a joyous ringing. So we inquired the next day, and they said, we don't know. Why did it ring? So it rang as the Don't Worry, Be Happy song was ringing. So we go back to Paradiso. One day, and I need to remind myself what I want to say, but I have to go back. One day, Katie comes to me in Merazad. And she said, Valeria, I'm coming to Italy to visit you. I'm staying a month. A month of August. The month of August in Italy is a place where people are on the beach. It's hot, places are crowded or empty. It's either this or that. It's not a time where to come to Italy at all. 1 month with Katie, what do? I became sick with anxiety, but really sick with anxiety. I remember there was a beautiful healer, Deborah, who took care of me gave me sessions. I was afraid. And then I was feeling such fear. I had to question, why am I so afraid of Katie, who, Katie became my dear friend, and Katie was such a smiling woman. What came to mind, and this is excuse my interpretation. There was a time during the war, Second World War, Baba was very interested in what was going on in the war, so much so that he had newspapers read by Donkin, but because Mera was not supposed to hear men's names, Mussolini was called Mrs. Mussolina. I had to laugh, Mussolini, or Musso. So I thought, and Baba was going away for months tours. So he asked Mani, Katie, Rano, I believe, yes, to set up, to organize a little play that they could play when he returned, so that he could enjoy. So he said, okay, Mani, you be Hitler. Rano, you be Chamberlain. Katie, you be Mussolini. So I connected Katie to Mussolini. Would I be so afraid of Katie? Because she had to interpret Mussolini. Apparently the play was very good, Bob enjoyed it, and Katie came and I enjoyed her staying. And it was not easy for me. It was adventurous, it was fun, it was full of other people who would come for a day or 2 or 3, follow the caravan, because we had a car, I had a car, we would go to Venice, of course. In Venice we had the most extraordinary meetings with people who would stop us and talk to us and tell us. And we went to Portofino. In Portofino, can I go on telling you this story?
Valeria, dear, I'm wondering also, we would break for lunch and you have a second time. So maybe this would be a good time to pause.
Yes.
And then in the afternoon we'll continue where you've left.
Anything you say.
Yes.
We have to remind you.